I'd like to call the Monday, May 19th, 2014 meeting of the Anderson Township Zoning Commission. You want to call the roll, Allison?
Mr. Lewis?
Here.
Mr. Cochran?
Here.
Ms. McBride?
Here. We have an agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for the May 19th meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The second item on the agenda then is the approval of minutes, and Paul, you and I were speaking, and I don't think we have enough of a quorum to approve any of the minutes.
We do not.
So, having said that, I think we'll move on to item number 3, which would be case 1-1993 Anderson, which is a major modification of the final development plan filed by Travis Egan. Paul, do you have a staff report for us?
We do. The location is at 3149 Wolf Run Court, and the request is for a major modification to the final development plan for case 1-1993. And this is to build an in-ground swimming pool as well as a patio into the no-build area and greenbelt area. As far as a little bit of history, in 1993, the final development plan for the sanctuary of Ivy Hills was approved. And then as part of this plan, there was a greenbelt area as well as a no-build area that was approved with the final development plan. And the proposed modifications, which you'll see on the site plan, go into that area. This is a map of the subdivision itself, and you can see the subject property is outlined in red. All of the surrounding in the sanctuary are all zoned AACUP, which is Single Family Community Unit Plan. This is just an aerial of the site. The intent of the greenbelt area was to provide somewhat of a natural area along the rear of the properties of the subdivision. So this is actually one of the few areas that the lots back up to each other, but as you can see the perimeter of the homes, the greenbelt area, and you've heard these cases before, so you're pretty familiar with the conditions. This line here, it's kind of hard to see, but this is the outline of the house. This is the outline of the proposed patio and the pool. This line here is the no-build area, and then this other line here, this is the greenbelt area. So you can see that the pool and the patio extend into the greenbelt area. This is the proposed plan, landscape plan. You can see the improvements. Again, this is the pool area. There is a fire pit, and this is not compliant with fire code, so this will need to be either modified or eliminated from the plan. But the rest, again, is part of the request tonight. These are some of the site photos. So this is looking at the rear of the home, just to give you an idea of the surrounding conditions. And this lot, compared to some of the other lots, is fairly flat, and that's in that subdivision. So again, as far as the history goes, the subdivision was approved in 1993. There have been multiple requests very similar to this, either for pools or decks or screened-in patios. And you can see the history of those. The latest was actually reviewed by this commission last year and approved. In staff findings, again, when we looked at the site, this was one of the lots that actually did back up to another lot and had no natural, that was leftover vegetation from the original area when the subdivision was put in. So even though that the limits were established to preserve the existing vegetation, there was none in this area, and staff felt that with the addition of the landscaping plan and the pool, that it didn't really contradict the intent of that greenbelt easement. Go on to the next one. So staff's recommendation was to approve the modification for the construction of the pool. You can see that the reasons of why staff feels that this should be approved. As far as the conditions, there are some recommended conditions. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Gentlemen, any questions for staff?
No questions.
No questions.
Okay. Would the applicant like to come up and share anything else with the commission?
Sure.
Can you give us your name and address for the record?
Travis Egan, homeowner at 3149 Wolf Run Court, the sanctuary of Ivy Hills. Pretty much most of it has been covered. I will say that I have had the opportunity to speak to all of my neighbors in the vicinity and explain to them show them the plan and explain to them what we're planning on doing. Everyone seemed to be very open to it. We are going to be adding landscaping, as you saw on the plan, to at least with my neighbor on the western side of the property. There's you can see we're putting in about 5 trees to further block that out. What you don't see on there is current vegetation in the southwest corner, which is a nice blockade to the neighbors to the west and to the south. And then on the eastern side of the property, there's also natural vegetation already. So it's fairly privatized from the neighbor standpoint currently. Also, we have gone through the process with the homeowners association, and that has been approved through the homeowners association as well. We moved to this house because they had a nice flat backyard and they're looking to put a pool in, so we're hoping that it will be approved. Any questions you might have, I'm happy to answer them.
Gentlemen, any questions?
No questions.
No questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Any
Okay.
discussion? Or-
No issues.
It seems to be very consistent with other actions we've taken as a commission in the last few years. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve as stated by staff.
I'll second.
Allison, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Cochran?
Yes.
Ms. McBride?
Yes. There you go, build the pool. Invite us all over.
Thank you.
I did have one question about the fire pit. So
Yes.
can you give me the stipulations? Is there
Uh,
allowed for fire pits?
Under certain conditions, I would recommend you actually call and talk to Assistant Chief Tom Reamer from our fire department, and he can go over everything with you.
Okay.
And if it's modified to meet fire code, then I think the zoning commission was okay with us just, approving it with this. If for some reason it's just not going to be able to be modified to meet fire code, then it would probably just need to be eliminated.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Great. Moving on then, we have some text amendments as case 1-2014.
So the request, we have several sections of the Township zoning resolution that we're requesting your consideration to amend. Staff started generating this list actually last year, and this list, periodically when we have multiple variances on the same items, or we find that a section of the zoning resolution is just unclear, needs, further tweaking just for clarification purposes. Also, the Hamilton County Regional Planning Commission modified the county zoning code. It was late last year, so we were somewhat waiting for them to modify theirs as well, and we were going to piggyback on some of their changes. So in the staff report, we noted that the areas that this was heard at regional planning on May the 1st, and I should back up. The trustees initiated the review process on March the 20th, 2014, and regional planning heard this on May 1st. Did you get the staff report in your packet? So they had a couple of comments on a couple of the sections, and we agreed with them and have incorporated them into revised Exhibit A. So the changes are highlighted in red. So we can start with the first one. The first one was the definition of agriculture, which is section 31.2, and we're recommending changing the township zoning resolution to correspond with the recent changes in the Ohio Revised Code, so that they're not contradicting, our zoning resolution is not contradicting the Ohio Revised Code. So you can see those changes. We've gotten requests to add different regulations pertaining to keeping of chickens, but we've had just as many. When those typically go before Board of Zoning Appeals, we have just as many that seem to show up that are concerned with raising chickens, that are in favor of raising chickens. So we left it as is, which means that you can raise chickens on your property as long as the chicken coop or the enclosure is 100 feet from all property lines. So That is not changing. We decided to leave that in itself, and if those certain situations where someone does not have 100 feet from the property lines, we'll let the Board of Zoning Appeals determine if that situation warrants a variance or not. So really, there's just a few minor changes with the definition of agriculture, and that's to keep it consistent with the Ohio Revised Code. The second section was Section 144, and in the zoning resolution, public sidewalks are required with all commercial development and also with subdivisions, but we were mostly concerned with the commercial developments. And the regulations specified the width of the sidewalk, and we wanted to take that specific width out because it varies depending on which right-of-way you're in. If you're in county right-of-way, typically it's a 5-foot wide sidewalk. If you're in ODOT right-of-way, it can be as small as 4. If you're up against a curb, it can be 7 feet or wider. So we really just wanted to take out the specific reference to the width and leave it up to the, either the county engineer or whoever, whichever right-of-way we're in. So it would be the approving authority, whether it's ODOT, the county engineer, or even if it's on a township street. But we rarely have commercial development on a township street. So. The second was Section 144. We had a requirement of 8-foot wheel stops in the current standard, or a lot of developers are going with 6 feet. So we felt like 6 feet was just as good as the 8 feet, and then a lot of times the 8-foot were more expensive and they were harder to find. So that's the only reason for that. Section 150 deals with perimeter landscaping, and it also deals with if we have an optimum number of parking spaces that you're required for commercial development. If you choose to go over the optimum, there is an option of either doubling the setback of your parking lot from the right-of-way or the landscaping, and it's always been very confusing if both are required or one or the other. And when we brought this before regional planning, they also pointed out that our landscaping requirements are different in each section. The standard is to have 1 tree per 30 feet of frontage on a right-of-way, and then if you had to double your landscaping, it was 1 tree per 40 feet. So we're bringing the requirement to both is needed if you go over the optimum number of parking spaces, both, especially if the parking is in the front yard. Both requirements, the double setback and double landscaping, and we're making the, or proposing that the requirements are the same, 1 tree per 30 feet and 1 shrub per 10 feet. Section 136.3 and 137.2, our planned office and planned retail zoning districts have required a greater setback than your single letter zoning districts. And this was adopted with our resolution back in the 80s, but all of our plans now, especially in certain areas, our Beachmont corridor plan and the riverfront plan, in certain areas they actually encourage reduced setbacks, and there's somewhat of a contradiction between our planned districts and our current plans. So we're proposing that the setbacks are consistent, whether it's a single letter zoning district or a double letter zoning district. And then, if it is in an area that's under an adopted plan, that the recommendations of that plan, would suffice. And then finally, at section 150, parking lot interior landscaping, it's not clear as if curbs are required around your interior parking islands, and we've run into situations where the owner has chosen not to do that, and it really runs into a maintenance and just an aesthetic issue down the road. So we're just clarifying that interior parking islands do require a curb.
And then I think maybe you skipped.
Did I skip one?
31, 37.
Oh, I did skip
the
one.
impervious
Definition of an impervious surface. So, did I?
Put the screen back on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't think I had it on the screen either. Okay, so I did skip that. I apologize. We have not had a definition of impervious surface, and this is critical under PUDs, to determine if a property is required to go through the PUD process or not. This was the definition that regional planning adopted, and we were wanting to follow suit. And where this comes into play, especially with compacted gravel or compacted surface, and regional planning is encouraging, just because of the intensity of that use, regardless if water can seep through the compacted gravel or some other type of pervious pavers, that you still need to go with the intensity of the use, because the runoff is actually greater, with compacted gravel than it is with a grass lot. And maybe not to the intensity of an asphalt parking lot, but still the intensity needs to be taken into account.
Do you think that in any way discourages them the use of pervious pavers?
Yes and no.
It's more expensive.
It is more
And if you're not
expensive.
getting any credit on your stormwater management.
And, the credit for your stormwater management is a little bit different than the zoning requirement anyway, so. And there actually, at regional planning, this was one of the topics that was discussed, that there needed to be better formulas, and I don't know that we're ready to go there yet.
So really, this definition is more about the vegetated area and the non-vegetated.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
I think the one thing I saw on the definition is it says to retain waiter on the second line of the blue text.
Maybe they were thinking dinner?
I was thinking of it right now, to be honest with you, but-
Retain waiter. I see that, okay. We'll make that correction.
John, any other questions for Steph on this?
Just general comment, just looking at this as a subset and not reviewing the total document, is there anything in this that conflicts with other language by making these changes? The staff looked at.
Right, we have looked at the entire document, and actually, since you brought that up, the township has hired a consultant, and we are in the process of reformatting the zoning resolution. Not necessarily any text changes other than what's before you tonight at this point.
Okay.
But once they go through the document, there may be some other contradictions like you're referring to, but that we haven't caught. And that'll be coming for you probably later this year.
And then the only other question that I have has to do with, on the setbacks with the relative to the study plans and so forth. Does the language then that we're proposing for the adopted plans versus specific areas may recommend a front yard, does that then negate the need for them to go to BZA if it's a straight letter, or to us if it's not?
No.
No?
No.
So that just kind of gives added
Yes,
enforcement to
right,
it? Okay.
added enforcement, yes.
Encouragement, okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you were ready, I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the recommended amendments as presented.
I will second.
Allison, you want to call the roll, please?
Mr. Cochran?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. McBride?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's everything on our agenda. Paul, do you have anything else for us? Do
That's
have a
all we
meeting
have.
in June?
I think we do, don't we?
June 23rd.
Are we
I think we do
anticipating
have-
getting?
We should.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All
Yes.
right, Good.
So if you could plan for it, please.
Okay. All those in favor then of adjourning?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you all.